Hello and welcome to another Global News Alliance training session. Our topic today is editing, also known as post-production. After the footage has been captured, the interview soundbites have been selected, and the voiceover narration has been recorded, it's time to put it all together using a video editing software application. Let me begin by saying that editing can be looked at in one of two ways, and I like the example of a mosaic or a sculpture. Everyone who knows what a mosaic is knows that it's a piece of art that's created by adding little bits and pieces in the right places in the right order. It could be little bits and pieces of ceramic pottery, it could be stones, it could be gems, it could be any number of things. But you're building it up by placing small bits in the right places. It's what we would describe as an additive process. In contrast to a mosaic, editing can be compared to the process of making a sculpture. I think it may have been Michelangelo when asked how you create a sculpture. He said, you just start with a block of granite and you chip away everything that isn't the thing that you're sculpting. This would be a subtractive process. I mean, the famous sculpture of King David, it just amazes me to this day that somebody can take a chisel and hammer and carve that out of a solid block of granite. But you can think of editing in that sense as well. You start with all of the raw material and you take away the parts that don't add to the story. You take away the extraneous or unnecessary parts as you chisel or whittle it down to something that fits the time that you have available. And that's a big part of what video editing is about. It's taking and reducing something to a manageable length. You might start with a 12-minute interview with an important person who's telling their part of the story. You might have 10 minutes of B-roll footage, and then you might have images or graphics to help illustrate the point. And if you added it all together end to end, it might be 20 to 30 minutes of material from which you have to produce a 1.5 to 2.5 minute video piece. Well, that's where editing comes in. You take out all of the unnecessary stuff and you're left with the essentials necessary to tell the story. A lot of editing then is editing for time, to reduce time, and I want to show you just a couple of short clips that demonstrate this idea of using editing to reduce the duration of an event by using a series of shots. This is not my footage, it's something that I found online, and it's a woman making a crepe. If you know what a crepe is, I think it's French, but it's a very thin griddle cake. We start with a single shot of her making a single crepe, and it lasts for about a minute. Okay, that was 1 minute and 6 seconds. But as you can see, there was a lot of wasted time. So let's suppose your news story is about a famous chef and her specialty is crepes and you want to show her actually in the kitchen making one. But you can't afford a minute to show it in real time, so you want to cut out the unnecessary parts. So here's the same clip with unnecessary parts cut out and transitions, or what VN calls motion, used to switch from shot to shot. Now I could have just cut out the unnecessary parts and left a jump cut at each point. A jump cut is simply a change in the shot where the framing and the composition stay the same, but whatever is in the shot changes. No doubt you're familiar with jump cuts. So now it is shorter, but visually it's not all that interesting. Let me show you an even shorter version that's made up of a series of individual shots. I think there's probably 6 or so shots that are taken from different angles and use different framing to show the same process. Okay, that was only 18 seconds long, and I think you would agree that it was much more interesting visually, and it showed the same process that we watched in the very first clip, which was over a minute long. So we ended up reducing the duration to a third, maybe even a quarter of the full length, and visually it was much more interesting. And it even included a very creative shot where the phone was under a piece of clear plastic and the batter was being poured right on top of that. Now that shot is a little gimmicky, but a very effective way to make you watch and look and take notice of what's happening there. Well before you begin editing, the process begins by shooting for the edit. All that really means is, while you're shooting, you're thinking about how each shot is going to contribute to the finished piece. This becomes a lot easier to do after you've shot and edited many pieces, but even for someone starting out, it's a good thing to be thinking about. So before you shoot, or while you're shooting, think about the edit. Think about all of the process of cutting these shots together to build the story. So when you go out on a shoot, you're thinking, I need sound bites, I need B-roll, I need nat sound. These are the ingredients that you're going to use to make the finished product. The ingredients necessary to make the cake, if you will. If you're a chef, you need to gather all your ingredients and then you start combining them, then you start cooking. So what are the ingredients? Well, first, interview sound bites. Sound bites are short segments extracted from longer interviews. You might interview someone for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, but what you really need is a 10-second soundbite about this, a 15-second soundbite about that, and a 7-second soundbite about another thing. You need these short, succinct statements from your interviewee, and each soundbite is going to convey an important part of the story. The sound bites will be used to punctuate the story that you're going to provide through your narration. And that's the second thing, the voiceover narration. By the way, the order of things is you write out the interview questions, you conduct the interview, you listen to the interview recording to identify the usable sound bites, and then you write the narration. You can write the narration before you do the interview, but you'll probably have to revise it after you choose your interview sound bites. Okay, so interview sound bites are the first ingredient. Narration, or sometimes called voiceover or VO, is the second part of that. These two things together, the sound bites and your voiceover narration, make up the A-roll. Most of the time we just talk about B-roll, and we seldom talk about A-roll, but what the A-roll is the essential footage that has the soundtrack that tells the story. So A-roll is sound bites and narration. B-roll is the visuals that show what the A-roll is talking about. So the third ingredient is B-roll footage. B-roll is frequently shot on location after the interview is complete. Another element used to tell a news story is nat sound or ambient sound. Nat sound, which is very important, is usually captured while you're shooting B-roll, but it can be captured separately. So what do we mean by nat sound? We're talking about the sound of the things happening that you're reporting about. So if you're reporting about a music festival, it would be the sound of music being played in the arena or on that location. If you're reporting about a weather event, certain kinds of weather produce certain kinds of sounds, and those would be important. If it's a rainstorm and a flood, you want the sound of rushing water and torrential rain. Nat sound is just the natural sound that accompanies your footage to make it more realistic. The next ingredient is graphics. These could be full frame graphics that fill the entire screen and show something that's hard to visualize without seeing animation or graphics portraying it. Or it could be just the lower third name supers used to identify key interviewees. And finally, depending on the type of news piece, music may be appropriate. In certain kinds of news stories, especially softer news, music might add an audio dimension that adds to the overall effect without being distracting. A word of caution though, one needs to be careful to not use music to manipulate the audience's emotions. So let's talk about the process after shooting before you actually start editing. Several things typically happen after shooting and before editing begins. First, you review the interview and you listen for the best sound bites. You listen for information that might inform your narration script and you make notes to that effect. Next, you review the B-roll footage and make notes about the best shots. Perhaps you repeated a particular shot 2 or 3 times to make sure you got it covered well, and now's the time to make a note to confirm which is the best. Basically, you're just making notes to yourself about what the best footage is. Next, you write the script and record your voiceover narration. Your voiceover narration is what's going to carry the story. The narration will be punctuated by interview sound bites that help you tell the story from eyewitnesses or people who are central to the story. Scripted narration, based on your research and information gathered during the interview, will carry the story. However, the sound bites lend an air of authority and credibility when the interviewees, who are often eyewitnesses, tell the story from their perspective. When it comes time to record your narration, you can record on your phone just like you record a voice memo. It's best to use a good audio app that will save a high-quality recording. I have one called Voice Recorder, and it saves a WAV file, so it's a pretty good quality voice recording. If you have a better quality microphone, that's even better to record your voiceover narration. VN also has a feature that allows you to record a voiceover directly in the app. Just press on the audio track and then select Record. Tap the Record button. This is a voiceover recorded directly in the VN video app. Now, with the voiceover recorded, this is a voiceover recorded directly in the VN video app. Once you have your soundbite selected and your voiceover narration written and recorded, it's time to start assembling the story. I recommend that you begin by laying down the audio from beginning to end. You basically establish the A-roll for your piece, and then you go back and insert the B-roll on the next track above the A-roll to provide a visual explanation of the events being discussed. The B-roll can also be used to cover up jump cuts in the sound bites. People have asked, well, how long should a particular B-roll shot last? My rule of thumb is, when you're shooting B-roll, make sure you record each shot for at least 10 seconds. So there's the raw footage, you should have at least 10 seconds of it, whatever it is. But then you'll edit from that raw footage and use just a snippet of that. Maybe it's 2 seconds, maybe it's 4 seconds, maybe it's 6 seconds. If it's a shot that involves camera motion, like a pan or a tilt, I would generally say do a 10-second move of the camera from beginning to end. So 2 seconds, do the pan or tilt, then hold for 2 seconds. And then you can use just the part in the middle, you can use just the beginning, or you can use just the end, or some combination. But when you edit it into the piece, the length of time really depends on the subject matter, because certain B-roll shots are more complex and require more processing on the part of the audience to understand what they're seeing. If it's a very simple shot, 2 seconds, 3 seconds could be plenty. But if it's something that's more complicated, you might need 4 to 5 seconds. I would say for most B-roll shots, not less than 2 seconds and not more than 5 seconds most of the time. That's a general rule, but again, it depends on the complexity of what's in the shot. Next, you add graphics and visual transitions if necessary. Generally, cuts are the best and most common transitions, with occasional cross dissolves. Wipes, defocuses, light flares can sometimes be used effectively, but the general rule is less is more. The last step in the editing process includes mixing sound levels, color correction or color grading, and what that means is simply adjusting the white balance or the brightness or contrast of your video clips. Then review the finished piece, make sure it accomplishes what you intend, maybe show it to a friend, and then export your video in the format and according to the specifications of your client. As always, we're united in our goal and purpose. Our mission at Global News Alliance is to tell the greatest story ever told and to equip others to tell their stories using the available technology. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.